While Japanese soldiers chased him, James calmly picked up a stone and threw it toward the nearby forest. The faint sound of the stone hitting the ground instantly drew the soldiers' attention in that direction. As they turned to look, James seized the moment and attacked. One soldier fell onto a landmine on the ground and exploded into pieces, but the loud blast attracted even more pursuing soldiers. James didn't dare stop for a second and immediately started running, but he soon found himself surrounded by the enemy. With no other choice, he let them tie his hands. The Japanese officer, who considered himself very clever, ordered his men to bind James's hands and execute him right there. Wanting to show off his power, he confidently pulled out a knife instead of his gun, but he didn't know this would be the last time he ever drew a blade. Alone and weakened, James tried to escape again, but he got caught in the enemy's trap. He ended up hanging in the air, and worst of all, the dagger slipped from his hand and fell to the ground. Once again, James was back in the custody of the Japanese soldiers. The good thing was that they didn't kill him immediately. Instead, they took him to a prisoner of war camp and handed him over to the higher officer. The commander pulled a medal from his waist. It was a special medal from the British Royal Air Force. The RAF had failed in a mission while assisting American-British joint forces. James was the only survivor from that mission. Seeing such a prisoner, the commander ordered his bonds to be removed so he could be killed in an even more humiliating way. But first, there was something else to do. Suddenly, 3 prisoners were brought to the center of the stage. Then a very powerful man stepped forward. He was the strongest boxer in the Japanese POW camp. With the ring of the bell, this 1 versus 3 fight officially began. The 3 prisoners were so weak that they had no chance of resisting. In just a few punches and spins, all 3 collapsed to the ground, or they were already dead. But the powerful boxer, who was the strongest wrestler in the camp, was like an ant in front of James, completely helpless and powerless. The commander had thought James would be given a humiliating death in front of everyone, but the opposite happened. The commander's own greatest weapon, that boxer, was killed. The commander's face turned black with rage. He flared up like an animal and immediately stormed back to his tent. With his incredible strength, James earned a name for himself in a single fight. The other prisoners got fired up just seeing him and started hugging him enthusiastically. James had now become a hero in the camp. Seeing this, the colonel's anger reached the 7th heaven. He immediately selected 3 soldiers who were experts in martial arts and pitted them against James. But little did they know that James had been learning martial arts from a master in Hong Kong since childhood. Even after joining the army, he had traveled the world, learning from various masters and making himself stronger. These 3 small-time karate fighters were nothing more than toys in front of him. When all 3 soldiers returned having eaten dust, James just gave a contemptuous smile. Then the 3 attacked together, but they were no match for James. James was truly the king of ground fighting. Even after victory, James was worried. If he didn't find a way to escape soon, death was certain. So he gathered the other prisoners and started making a plan. The camp was right in the middle of the jungle, dense forest all around, with Japanese army traps and snares everywhere. Running away without thinking meant embracing death directly. Then James shared a plan. There was a high watchtower for surveillance with a wireless radio on it. If they could steal that radio, they could contact the Allied forces, who would send soldiers to rescue them. Everyone agreed unanimously. The time came to put the plan into action. James hid quietly while the other prisoners deliberately created a huge commotion, shouting, pushing, shoving, and fighting. When the guard came down to calm the chaos, James seized the opportunity and quickly climbed the sentry tower. From there, he grabbed the wireless telephone. Once the commotion died down, James prepared to hide the radio, but suddenly a nurse appeared in front of him. The good thing was that she was also a prisoner captured by the Japanese army. When James saw her, he simply ignored her and slipped away quietly. In the darkness of the night, James searched for the weakest part of the camp, a spot where the fence was broken. He quietly slipped out and with the radio headed straight to the top of the hill. From there, James looked toward the sea and spotted American ships on the water. He immediately tuned the radio to the Allies' special channel, but the voices coming through sounded like strange nonsense. Some kind of coded message that James couldn't understand. Still, he could tell it was an encrypted order. The American forces were about to launch a major operation soon. This wasn't good news for the prisoners. If the Allies attacked, the Japanese colonel would panic and kill the captives first, so everyone had to escape as quickly as possible. Suddenly, James remembered something. He had seen an old, abandoned glider in the jungle. The glider had some thorns stuck in it, but the main parts were still perfectly intact. If an Allied plane could swoop low and hook onto the glider, they could all fly away through the air. Out of nowhere, a Japanese soldier appeared and dragged James to Dassault's office. It turned out the Japanese had intercepted the same coded message but couldn't figure it out either. so they called James, thinking maybe this British Air Force man could decode it. James didn't tell them anything. Dasso got furious. He had James's arms strung up overhead and whipped him relentlessly. For 3 straight days and nights, the lashes kept coming. Completely exhausted, James collapsed to his knees on the ground. Then a small soldier took pity and untied his ropes. But they had no idea this would be their biggest mistake. James staggered to his feet, only for another soldier to knock him back down with a baton. Still, James had endured brutal devil training like this before. These injuries were nothing to him. When the soldier came in for another strike, James snatched the baton away and counterattacked instantly. Even badly wounded, James was more than a match for all 3 soldiers combined. Soon, all 3 lay defeated on the ground. Instead of killing James, Commander Dasso let him go. He went straight to the other prisoners and arbitrarily selected a few lucky ones to separate and send away, probably to be executed or moved somewhere else. This incident only strengthened James's resolve to escape. As soon as night fell, James took one fellow prisoner with him and slipped out of the camp quietly. They reached the top of the hill and, looking toward the American ships in the sea, began sending rescue signals. To avoid interception by the Japanese, companions spoke in Navajo code. They gave their identity and the exact location of the POW camp. After transmitting the information, both hurried back to the camp. But when they arrived, they were stunned. The entire camp was empty. No one was there. Both of them opened the door to see what was happening, but at that moment, several Japanese soldiers burst in and knocked them unconscious without hesitation. When they came to, it was already the next morning. Outside, the roar of fighter planes echoed. The camp had turned into a battlefield. They were tied so tightly with ropes that they couldn't even move. Then 2 nurses arrived. They also wanted to escape this hell. Without hesitation, they untied both of them. Outside, Japanese soldiers were mercilessly slaughtering unarmed prisoners. James and his companion immediately returned to the camp. They pulled out the hidden wireless telephone, but unfortunately, it had been destroyed by bombs. With no other option, they ran toward the sentry tower where there was another radio. When the sentry came down, the 2 nurses struck him so hard that his skull cracked. James and his companion climbed up, grabbed the radio, and contacted the Allied forces. They coordinated an evacuation plan. Then James saw the Japanese soldiers killing the remaining prisoners. His patience finally broke. Filled with rage, he picked up a gun and started shooting at the cruel soldiers. The sudden attack caused chaos. The surviving prisoners grabbed weapons and charged at the Japanese. It was now a fight to the death. Cole, one of James's companions, clashed with the camp's sub-commander during the battle. The man looked thin and frail, but was extremely dangerous in combat. In just a few punches, he knocked Cole to the ground. At that critical moment, a tall, burly prisoner appeared and saved Cole. He then lunged at the sub-commander with a knife. In a few exchanges, the big man started losing ground. The sub-commander locked him using his ground-fighting skills. It seemed victory was within his grasp. But the big man rose with raw strength, lifted the sub-commander into the air and slammed him down. The sub-commander came back for another attack, but the big man grabbed his leg and beat him mercilessly. Just as he was about to deliver the final fatal blow, bullets flew in and struck the sub-commander in the chest, killing him. On the other side, James stormed into the commander's tent. Commander Ito silently threw a samurai sword toward James. Wanting a fair fight, James tossed his gun aside, so it would be sword against sword. But Ito broke the rules by pulling out a pistol. James immediately tackled him and slammed him to the ground. Then James unleashed a barrage of punches on Ito, one after another, fast and lethal. But right then, Cole came running and pulled James away. The most urgent thing now was to escape this place as quickly as possible. James gathered the surviving prisoners and led everyone out of the POW camp. They reached the old glider. James immediately fired a rescue signal flare toward the Allied forces. Then he drove 2 sturdy wooden poles into the ground, tied a rope around them, and securely fastened the other end to the glider. Once everything was set, all the prisoners hid inside the glider. At that moment, a group of Japanese soldiers came charging from behind, but right then, an Allied fighter plane arrived and gunned down the soldiers with its machine guns, driving them off. The plane descended, approached the glider, and with pinpoint accuracy, hooked onto the dangling rope in the air. The glider, with no engine of its own, was pulled along at high speed and took off into the sky. The rescued prisoners hugged each other in joy, but for those who couldn't escape, they had no idea what awaited them, perhaps death or even greater cruelty. Years later, James arrived at a famous boxing gym in Japan. The owner of the gym was none other than the son of the former POW camp commander Ito. As soon as the gym owner gave the order, all his minor thugs jumped on James at once. But they were nothing more than flies in front of James. He easily knocked them all down. Seeing this, the gym owner decided to fight him himself. He told his men to back off and stepped forward to face James, but his strength wasn't even a tenth of his father's. With just one hand, James beat him so badly that he dropped to his knees and surrendered. The defeated gym owner pulled out a box. Inside was the same medal, the one Ito had taken from James years ago. James took back his medal and walked away silently without a word. Left behind was the gym owner with clear regret in his eyes. And a warning to anyone who hasn't subscribed to the Filmod channel, James will beat the hell out of you.